This is a film about how you could use a tool to organize information so that you can develop your literary analysis. Now we're going to use the film Shrek as an example, and also these different categories of information on the left here. The most important part is that always when we look at information from a text or from a film, we look at both the answer to the different categories, like the information, for example, of the plot, like what is the plot, what is important in the plot, what's the most important aspect of what happens in the story, but also proof, that we go to the text and we go to the film and try to prove why our conclusion here is the right one. Start off with the plot in Shrek is that they go on a trip and Shrek saves a princess from a tower, but is then separated from the princess and then wins her back with the help of his friends. The little bit deeper answer is that the adventures that Shrek and the princess share helps them discover that they are alike and also that they can accept that people are different. So there's a turning point where Shrek actually acknowledges that he has feelings for Fiona and they have feelings for each other, but also that Shrek discovers that he actually needs other people or characters to help him, and he can accept that. Now, the proof of this is we could find that in the film, for example, in the scene where they fight the robbers together, where they share a taste in food, where they start laughing at each other's jokes and not frowning at each other instead, and also that they, in the end, work together to fight the Duke. The characters in the plot, for example, Shrek, Fiona, and the Duke, have different character traits. And the proof of this is, for example, you could see Shrek in the beginning shouting and screaming a lot, and Fiona not being only the little princess, but also a very strong woman who can fight and make her own way through the world. And of course, the Duke is clearly a very cruel person. You could see that when he tortures the gingerbread man, and also a vain person when he keeps looking at the mirror all the time. Of course, there's a lot of short jokes all the time as well about how short he is and how that affects his view of the world. When it comes to themes, I've chosen Love Conquers All for this film. It is, of course, possible to find another theme. For example, change is always good. But when it comes to Love Conquers All, you could see that in, for example, that the different characters, Shrek and Fiona, who are very different in the beginning, they actually fall in love. Same thing with Donkey and Dragon, a donkey and a dragon falling in love, which is also a proof that love sees no hindrance, it can come from anywhere. When we come to the message of the film, I've chosen to believe that the message is being different is better than everything being the same and staying the same. The proof of my interpretation of the message is that the Duke's castle represents a sterile and fake Disney world where everything looks the same. Also, he tries to expel all kind of different fairy tale creatures so that his world will be a place where everybody looks the same. But we will see that Shrek and Fiona, when they win, they will live in a world where everybody mixes and everybody is different. Also, we see that Shrek and Fiona, they first argue and then they become interested in their differences. For example, when it comes to food. We also see that Shrek is very much alone in the beginning, but then he ends up living with everyone and accepting everyone, or at least tolerating everyone. When we come to storytelling techniques, we can look at, for example, similes, symbolism or metaphors, intertextuality, and other things. I've chosen to look at the simile that ogres are like onions, which is stated in the film, and also that architecture has a great deal of symbolism in the story. Also, there's a lot of intertextuality, for example, from where they pick stuff from different kinds of music and fairy tale cliches. The proof that these similes and symbolisms are central to the story are, for example, that the story about change comes back in music, like, for example, the song Changes by David Bowie, and Don't Judge a Book by its cover, which is all about not just looking at the surface, but looking beneath, which is also connected to the simile about onions, because if you peel back the layers of the onion, you come to the true core, the true meaning of a person, not just looking at what a person looks like. Of course, symbolism of architecture could be seen in jokes and comments about the Duke's place, the Duke's castle, where it's very sterile and also very streamlined, which could be seen as a comment on consumerism and the de-identification of people in today's world. Lastly, we come to language. Now, one of the things that is central to this story is that they use fairy tale language and phrases that are common to fairy tales in the story. Also, there's a difference in how people speak. Shrek, for example, uses a Scottish accent, while Fiona and the Duke speak American English, but proper American English, almost on the verge of being RP, or receipt pronunciation. We could see that in phrases like, for example, they use once upon a time and other fairy tale phrases throughout the film, and also by Shrek actually accenting his Scottish expressions like ach no and so on to highlight that he speaks differently than other people. This could be seen as him being more down to earth than others, if you want to interpret that. Now that we have most of the information in place, we could start looking at what connects these dots and what can we do with this information. So I'll just show you a few things you could do to actually develop these ideas further on that we've gone so far. For example, if we're happy with this message and need to develop the analysis on the basis of that message, we could start connecting it. Okay, the focus point of this message is change is something good. Now we can clearly connect that to the music and also to some point to the simile about the onions, that you need to look beneath the layers of the onion to see what a person is really like. We could also see that this description or these descriptions of the characters, they are too static. It's not all about change. We need to beef up or develop the descriptions of, for example, Shrek and Fiona, and especially Shrek. He changes a lot during this film, so the proof and the answer around characters should be developed more to look at the change that Shrek undertakes in this film. We might also want to look further into the plot and see if there are any more examples about how changes take place in the plot and what kind of specific scenes help us explain, or what proof we can find that change is central to the plot. So it's not just a matter of remembering what the film is about and making notes. It's also good for you to go back to film or go back to the text and develop your ideas after you've organized your information on a spreadsheet like this. The next step for you is actually to start writing and formulating text around your analysis, which is a whole different matter.